Good morning. It is 5:31 a.m. on True Love Tuesdays. Welcome. It is Tuesday, July 6th, 2021. True Love Tuesdays, when we focus on the relationships. True Love Tuesdays, where we focus on the relationship between the two sexes, using our sense of the world to make sense of the world. World peace through individual strength. Waking up the globe, physically but also spiritually. Feeling objectively amazing for yourself. With your host, Herbie on Pago One. Good morning, how art thou? How art thou? Are you ready to feel objectively amazing for yourself? With body guidance you will not get anywhere else? To supercharge that morning and your life and dreams. I'm your host, Herbie. And this is Pago On, where we focus on relationships. As in romantic relationships? No, but maybe sometimes. As in our relationships to everything in the world is essential. That's what we really look at. That's what we really look at. The things themselves, but also our relationship to them, as we see as most important. So today we discuss the relationship between the sexes. We'll be right back. Are you ready to feel amazing in that godlike body of yours? That amazing body of yours. You godlike creature thing, you. Are you ready to feel amazing? Are you already feel amazing? Are you stretching in the morning, getting out of bed? Are you about to go brush your teeth? Maybe you're already brushing your teeth. Maybe you're already brushing your teeth. Maybe you've already gotten out of bed and you are already preparing as you are jamming out to this amazing song with me. Are you ready to feel objectively amazing in that body of yours for yourself? With some body guidance, follow these blue lines, everybody, as we see the weight being placed on the full weight-bearing portion of the spine, which is the front, and then allowing our weight to be divided down the side of the pelvis bone into the sit bones. There's rainbow arches, making 2 points of contact with the seat or the sitting surface in which you are on. Feeling the front of the shins, and then remembering that you do not sit on your legs, so that we can feel objectively amazing on Pago On. So that we can wake up physically in the mornings, but also metaphorically in our heads, spiritually. Every weekday mornings, with your host Herbie on Pago On at 5:30 in the morning. It is now 5:34 in the morning. I want to thank our good friend Herbie Light for the host. Where you at? No sound this morning. Well, thank you for the host this morning. So what are we doing here on Pago On? We're looking at relationships. As in, pretty much everything is a relationship, is it not? We have relationships to the world. That's how we know what to look at. Yes, we have cars. And we have emotions, and we have all these things that exist in the world. Foods, flavors, pleasures in the world. But what do we look at? The relationship between them and us. Why is that? And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by we look at the relationships between them? Let's give some examples. For example, you have a relationship with plates. The idea of a plate. Yeah, you got plates, but do you use a plate? Do you think about a plate all the time? No, you have a relationship with plates, right? You only think about plates when you usually consider things to put on a plate. Foods, usually. So usually when you're in the hungry domain of the human experience, then you will more often think about plates. You have this relationship with plates, as in you don't always think about plates because there's infinite things to think about in the world. You don't necessarily have relationships with things to alert you as to when to think about those things, as you're not thinking about all things at the same time, right? You're not your body where you're feeling your entire body at the same time, right? You can't feel the entire universe at the same time. You can't hold the entire universe in your head at the same time. But you can hold your whole body in the same time, right? Like you can feel your whole body all at once. But the entire universe cannot be thought of at once because those are individual different things, right? Another example would be like planets. You don't think about planets every day, yet you have a relationship with them. Not just gravity, but just the idea of planets. When do you talk about Pluto or Neptune? Usually when you're not looking at bridges or a strawberry or a coffee bean. Maybe that is the essence of creativity, is it not? But we're not thinking about those things all the time, right? It's our relationship to these things. It's our relationship to everything in the world that we really concern ourselves with. A more physical example might be, another physical example would be, well, we have a relationship with, again, cups, right? Similar to plates, you think of a cup when you are thirsty or want to put some kind of liquid into a container which you want to move around, right? So you have a relationship with even the liquids and the cup especially. As in, you're not using it all the time, and there's a certain time and place for it. And you know there's certain times and place for it because you are looking at the rest of the world to have a comparison, again, a relationship. And so you find out where to place things because you are finite. You are a finite being. You are a physical being. You can't be everywhere at once, right? You can't be all the places at once. You can't do all the things. So you have to have a relationship with things so that you can prioritize certain things so that your life continues to go on and get better. So you have a stronger relationship with certain things that continue to boost your life in the positive way. So on Pagoma, what we do is focus on relationships. Because in this world, we live in the observable world, but the observable world does not exist without the observer, right? As in, without an observer, how do you even know that the observed world exists? There is nothing. It's an observed world, but how do you know it exists without an observer? I'll say it again. Say it with me. It's an observed world, but how do you know it's an observed world without an observer? Say it with me. It's an observed world, but how do you know it's there without an observer? You know what I'm saying? It's like the yin and yang. The observed world exists because the observer exists. And the observer exists, well, obviously, because it exists in the observed world. But the observed world cannot exist without an observer, because how else would you know it's just there? It's just a bunch of rocks. If it were even there, how do you know, right? It's like the yin and yang. They create each other. They cannot exist without it. You have one half of the yin yang, and it's not a yin yang anymore. You just have the white half or the black half. If you take away one part, then it's not the thing anymore. It's not yin yang anymore. You gotta scope out a little bit, right? The observed world exists because the observer exists. We necessarily know that. That's the least amount of variables that we can break the world into. If we just want to break it down. You want to break down as we wake up, figuratively, but also physically, in the mornings. And that's why we look at relationships on Padawan, because it's not just the existence of the yin and yang. It's not just the existence of the black part and the white part of the yin and yang. It's that when they come together, they create a new thing called the yin and yang. And that is because there is a relationship. There is a contrast between the black and white. There is a relationship. And as you know, a relationship requires two things, but it creates a third thing, this third invisible line, which is like a relationship. You got the object A, you got object B, and then you got the relationship between those two. And that relationship is what we look at Padawan, because that's the only thing that matters. Why is the relationship the only thing that matters? Because every human is a separate observer. So that means every time we want to understand a human being, we must understand that the world is just about relationships. Why is the human being acting that way? Is it because there's some flawed thing about them, that there's some like unredeemable, flawed part of them that they can never redeem themselves for? No, it's just a relationship with certain things that causes them to act certain ways, because as you know, our inside world is so strong. As in our inside world, as in our mentality, as in our brain. Our inside world, right? Our unseen world on the inside, all our feelings, emotions, a chaotic world, right? All that stuff. It's so strong. that it defines how people act. So however it feels about the world, whatever it knows, whatever its relationship is with the observed world, the observer will behave as such. So how do you want to understand people? How do you want to understand what's going on in the world today? On Palgamon, you look at the relationships of people and ideas. You look at the relationship between people and other people. You look at the relationship between people and themselves. You look at people and the relationships with the world, the relationship with art, the relationship with language, right? How do they feel about language? What do you think language is used for? Where do they think language originated from? How do they think language will affect human beings? Relationships. That's all that matters. Otherwise, you just have, there's no such thing as just a floating thing in just space. It just exists. No, there's a relationship to the world around it. The world is affected by it. Nothing lives in a vacuum, including human beings. But why should we look at the relationship between the two of everything? Because every human being is an observer in the observed world. So to understand anything by any human, which is the whole world, as humans are affecting the entire world all the time, right? To understand any of that, we must understand that everything is simply a relationship between the observer and the observed world, because every observer interprets the observed world differently. So the relationship is what we should look at. You fix the relationship, you fix both sides, as both are being affected by both sides, but simply by the relationship. The relationship between humans and Earth was not the way it is today, as it was years ago, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. Our relationship evolves over time. Is it the thing? No. A relationship evolves. And what's so beautiful about that is that the human body actually is the baseline to have a relationship with. As in, it's the one thing that's constant. Out of like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 and plus years of human beings being on this earth. What changes? The world, the weather, the time, the date, the years, the cities, the countries, the lands, the geography. Everything else changes, and ironically enough, the thing that actually dies out every 50 to 60 years if they're lucky, and then more if they're even luckier. Ironically, that's the only thing that hasn't changed over all of these years. It just keeps getting passed along. How do we know that? Because the body, look at the body, the spine and its design has not changed. Ever since we've attained this God thing within us, or at least the ability to perceive it, our design has not changed. Something that we didn't choose, right? This design thing. Yet it exists within all of us, there to unite all of us. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that absolutely amazing? As we have this baseline, baseline design of human beings that's been the same thousands of years. You can go as far back as you want for human beings, and you can safely assume that we look straight at their bodies, and that's how we can identify that they're certain people, because we understand that the design has not changed, and so we can go back in time. It's just amazing. We can go back in time and look and see that people were exactly the same in terms of all this skeletal stuff. So what does that mean? It means that we actually have this like common language with us in the past, as in that's the only thing that hasn't changed actually, whereas languages have changed, religions have changed, nations have changed, politics have moved, information around has falsified information over the years. The one thing that hasn't changed is the human body. Isn't that so amazing? Why is that so amazing? Well, let me tell you. Because that gives us a stable ground to create now what? A relationship with. So now the world around actually has a base layer, has a baseline to now contrast everything else with, to understand everything else with. Because as you know, the whole world exists again in parts of twos, right? Like a yin and yang. You need not just the observed thing, but the observer to understand the relationship between the two. Because you have the observed thing, which presumably is just an object floating in thin air, right? And then you have the observer, which is like this moving object, this moving being that now has a relationship with this thing that's just floating in midair. This amazing body of ours has been transferred to us generation after generation. And it doesn't change. It's like the one thing in history that's not changing. And so that's beautiful, because if you think about it across time, then it gives us the one constant, the human body, and how it functions, and how the fact that it has relationships with things. Isn't that beautiful? So we can begin to understand more about our history finally, our relationship with things. What we were missing is more of the definition of what those insides, of what that common language was. You know, on Palgawan, we're giving you guided meditation, body mapping, with info that you won't get nowhere else. As in, we talk information that isn't just skin deep. We go deeper than that. We talk about bones, the thing that have not changed. As in, you're placing the weight of the body on front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all times. What is your relationship with that? As in, is it hard to feel that? And aren't your guts there so that they kind of decide, like, you know, how you're feeling and whether or not you can feel better in the next moment? Your morning would feel so good on Pagawan. So thank you for joining here. So that's why we focus on relationships, as human beings are the one thing that does not change throughout time. Isn't that so crazy? So as we focus on relationships here on Pagawan, we focus on relationships, do we not? Mondays, we focus on the relationships between you and yourself. You and yourself. Good morning. Whether you are here now, like our good friend Eric, or you are there in the future as a time traveler, seeking us from the future. What we do here on Pagawan is focus on relationships. As in, the relationship on Monday is the relationship between you and yourself. You godlike being you. You godlike creature you. We help you get more in tune and aligned with yourself with no nonsense on the No Nonsense podcast on the Best Feeling Network. We show you information about yourself on Mondays and throughout every day, but we focus on Mondays about you and your relationship with yourself with information that is more than skin deep. It is bone deep. Let's get on that same page, yo. Let's get the human experience on the same page so we can learn to love life together. Love life together and not fear death. On Tuesdays, we talk about the relationships between the sexes on True Love Tuesdays. Welcome. Welcome to True Love Tuesdays. And for the rest of the week, we continue to work on relationships and discuss relationships on Pagawan. Relationships on Wednesdays, a relationship between humans and the world. Warfare Wednesdays, there is a war for your soul. We talk about the war for your soul. And all the while making you feel so great on the way through, right? This is a Best Feeling Network. And then on Truth Hurts Days, we talk about some hard truths so the human body can be ready and well-trained and aligned to make your way to freedom. On Freedom Fridays, as we discuss our relationship with the universe, with freedom itself, with our soul. Freedom. We discuss our relationship with basically philosophy and stuff like that on Fridays. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to take a small body break for you to do whatever the heck you want. It is the morning. I want to invite you to feel the weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all times. It might sound weird, but I want you to say it with me. Feel the weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all times. Just remember that the weight-bearing portion of the spine is the front. Stretch our self-awareness like a muscle this morning as you're brushing your teeth, whatever you are doing. Go ahead and make that bagel. Go ahead and cook that cheese, cook that egg. As long as you're feeling the weight of the body in the front of the spine, we'll be right back. Talking about relationships between the sexes and submission today, guys. Submission. Spicy topic. We'll be right back. our sense of the world. To make sense of the world. And of course, world peace through individual strength. Waking you up in the mornings, weekdays, not just physically, but also spiritually, mentally. Feel that self-awareness of yours stretch around like a muscle. And welcome back. I'm your host, Herbie, and this is Pal Go On. Did you have a nice break? Are you brushing your teeth right now? Don't forget to brush your tongue. Are you in space on Mars or something? In the far, far future, or maybe near future of 2021, and are you saying hi to Earth miles away? Thank you for taking me with you. I've always wanted to be up here. The observed world and the observer. There's a relationship between everything. And today on True Love Tuesdays, we discuss submission as we discuss the relationships between the sexes on every True Love Tuesday. Relationship between the two sexes on True Love Tuesday. The relationship between the two sexes on True Love Tuesday. Submission. 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 A concept that is not very highly esteemed these days, right? It's not exactly the most socially beneficial thing these days to say someone is submissive. Is that not true? Submission is kind of seen as a negative thing these days, right? Is that not true? Do we not see submission as kind of like a weak thing, right? In society? Isn't submission seen as something that we should never do? Typically, we look at what? We look at religious folk. Typically. What do they say? Oh, those weak folk submitting to this god thing. This god creature in the sky. This naked guy in the sky floating, telling people what to do. Submission. We see it as a negative thing, do we not? There's a lot of suffering right now between the relationships between the sexes and the relationship between women and women. Suffering. The relationship between a woman and herself. Constantly suffering these days. Why is it? Is it not because we don't have language to positively view the human female experience? Even the word submission that we commonly associate it with the female spirit, the feminine. Even that, submission, is seen negative. Yes, the one thing that women are... Not the one thing, but one of the many things that women are... It is in the sphere of things in which women are naturally attuned towards this submission thing, a natural part of the human experience that's necessary and good for the human experience. But Herbie, how is submission ever a good thing? Why are we talking about submission, Herbie? On True Love Tuesdays, are we not trying to invest our time to actually articulate with some language the positivity of the feminine experience, as not just men, but especially women are suffering from our inability to communicate these concepts? And feel good about doing it, of course, with no anger, always on Pal Go On, right? Submission. Why would submission ever be a good thing? Well, maybe because you're a finite being in this crazy, chaotic world that you can't control. Is submission not something very valuable? When you are in traffic, going to work, are you in the car right now? Should you try to not submit to the traffic, or try to impose your will on the traffic? You drive straight through cars? Good luck with life. You go to jail real quick. People smush you down real quick because you destroy the world around you should you not submit. Submitting is a natural part of not just humans, but rather it's an entire attitude towards the world. Are you God or are you not God? Are you God or are you a human being within this world that you must submit to? Oh, you want to be over there, but you cannot do that right now? You must submit to that fact. Or suffer and die, as we say, right? As we all have the right to, because we have so much freedom in this amazing godlike body of yours. You godlike creature. You amazing godlike creature, you. Poised for success and poised for overcoming hardships. You amazingly designed creature, you. As amazingly designed as we are also amazingly designed to accept, appreciate, and really take advantage of submission. As in submitting to the moment you are in so that your human experience can focus all your energy on actuating the potential within you right here and now. You are strongest and most free to do anything from the position you are at now in balance. But should you try to be making the moment something else, should you not be submitting to the moment, you suck yourself of all the energy that you need to be amazing in that moment. You sap yourself of the energy. You sap yourself of the potential you had to be great in this moment should you not submit to the moment. Should you try to be controlling the moment, making it something that it is not, well, guess what? You are now playing in a different rule, a different level than actually your body is, right? You're constructing a different level in your head than where your body is actually at because you're trying to create something that is not there. You're not submitting to the moment. Submission, we see it as a good thing. Now, we don't like being oppressed. But that's very different than submission. That's like slavery. That's like oppression. That's like a power. That's like power struggles over like people through force and like brute force. But when we talk submission, we're talking submission about the human experience, the relationship between you. First of all, you and yourself on Mover Monday, but then on True Love Tuesday, it's the relationship then into the sexes. Because what is our relationship with the sexes if not first relationship with ourselves, right? As everything is, which is why we have Mover Monday, where we focus on the self. Because you are a mover. Always moving as you're breathing in and out. You're always moving. You're always moving the world around. And you're always moving yourself through the world. You are a mover. But the submission, for you to be potentiated in your most amazing self, you godlike creature, you, this morning, don't you have to submit to moments now? Don't you have to submit that you have to go to work? Or you can suffer while you go to work, but will your work not suffer? And so will you not be further and further away from this promotion you want? From the ability to affect this company in the way that you want? Do you not put yourself further and further from that when you do not submit to the moment? Isn't there something beautiful about being able to submit to the moment and then making the best of the moment? Don't you have to submit to the moment to make the best of the moment? Are you going to be that person at the dinner table who gets slightly colder peas and does not submit to the moment and is now angry and giving themselves indigestion as they eat this food begrudgingly, instead of submitting to the moment and loving life, loving what is right there at the moment within the reach of their physical kinesthetic experience, right? As opposed to just being like, you know what? Peas, amazing, great, I have food, look at these people around me, they did this for me as well, that's awesome. Look at that, I have a roof over my head. Wow. But no, without submission, you'd be death-fearing. As in, you're always wishing life could be somewhere else. It's like, you're always fearing that the moment that you want is never gonna come. You wanna live life death-fearing? Is that your relationship you want with the world? Where we go like, oh, peas? Oh, it's not the way that I wanted. Oh man, I'm so mad and fearful of the fact that I'll never get the life that I want. It's death-fearing. As in, you're afraid of this, like, you're afraid of that your best feelings in life will die. Instead of just life-loving. There is no past, there is no future, but loving life where it is right here and now. Isn't that require submission? Isn't there something beautiful and honest about submission? To be able to submit to the moment, to love what is there. And to not just believe that you can impose that will on everything else and just ruin your own mood. You know what I'm saying? So submission, we see it as something, a very positive thing. We're here at the 30-minute mark, so we're talking about submission today. First, we talk about our relationship with submission in and of itself, with ourselves, as our relationship with all the sexes is first a reflection of ourselves, right? In the second half, we're going to talk about now our relationship to submission and the opposite sex, and why we find it attractive, typically for the feminine spirit, to be submissive. This dangerous word, submissive, which can also just mean graceful, right? Another word for graceful. Submissive. Another word for graceful. Submissive. Another word for graceful. Say it with me. Submissive. Another word for graceful. Say it with me. Submissive. Another word for graceful. Poised to return to balance at any moment. Poised to deal with any situation at any moment, submitting to the moment. Is that not beautiful? As we take our break, I hope that you are taking time to feel the weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all of the times. And then, are you feeling the front of your shins? And remembering that you do not sit on your legs. We'll be right back on Pogo On. But I'm open to suggestions. Yeah, you know that we're coming back. You know that we're coming back. You know that we're coming back. We're coming back. We're coming all the way back. Hello, hello. Good morning. We're coming all the way back here. Using our sense of the world to make sense of the world. World peace through individual strength. Waking you up, not just physically, but spiritually. With your morning podcast, your morning would feel great on Pogo On. Your only no-nonsense podcast on the Best Feeling Network. I'm your host, Herbie. Welcome back. Were you able to feel the front of your shins? Were you able to not sit on your legs? I want to thank Eric Taylor. I think on YouTube says, didn't realize you were live. LOL, was watching another cast. Either way, man, I'm happy to hear it. We're here live, or you can watch a VOD, a video on demand. You don't mind either way. Definitely appreciate you. And I hope you're here to stay. And also, I want to give a shout out to Unicycle Man on DLive. Donating 2 ice creams. What? Out of nowhere. Whoosh, dynamic entry. Thank you so much. Thank you, Unicycle Man. I hope you've been enjoying the replays on DLive. It's been amazing times. It's been so fun doing these. We're just waking up the world together, guys. Figuratively, metaphorically, physically. As we are all embodied inside a physical body, you must take care of the observer as we observe the world. We have the observed world, and of course the observer. The observed world, and of course the observer. And so we look at relationships. That connection that's created between when there's a contrast that is created between two things. Like having an observed world, an observer. Now you have a relationship. We're talking about submission today. And why is submission sexy? Why is submission hot? Maybe because submission is a normal part of the human experience for both sides, men and females. Right? Why has it been so hard to discuss positive words about submission and the feminine spirit? Well, maybe because we're only looking at half the world. Maybe because we've only been looking at half the entire experience the entire time. Now, Herbie, what do you mean by that? What do you mean we've only been looking at half the world? Yeah, we've only been looking at half the equation, guys. As in, there's the observed world, which is what we've been looking at, and that's where we see all the great things of like, oh, these are all the great things that like men are good at. Like, look at his strength, look at his size, look at his speed, look at his achievements, look at his money that they make, look how many body counts they have. We're looking at the observed world and have all these positive things to say about how you can affect the observed world, which makes sense because we lived in this sense, and we lived in the visual sense mostly, right? We mostly lived into the visual sense in the last hundreds, thousands of years, right? There's the observed world, but we've only been looking at half the freaking equation because there's the observed world, and then there's also the observer. Bam! The observer is just as important as the observed world. There is no observed world without the observer. How do you know there's an observed world if you don't have an observer? So the observer's condition and their relationship with the world is very important. And so if we're only looking at half the equation, no wonder we were only able to give positive words and positive articulations of language, concepts, for half of the people. The masculines, the masculine energy. Well, Herbie, what's the feminine energy about then? What are some good words about the feminine energy? Well, maybe submission. Why do we see submission as a bad thing? Well, because maybe we only have half of the equation. We're only looking at how the outside world affects people of submission, and not looking at how submission affects the inside world of people, how it affects them on the inside. That is a mammalian thing, a human mammalian thing, a feminine trait. To look at the self is the feminine attenuation. Women are more attuned to the self. They tend to be more attuned to the self. That was the equation that was missing. There's this layer, that skin layer, right in the middle. Bam! Right where your skin ends. Bah! You split the observed world, and the observer. You got two halves, two infinities, right? You start at yourself, and you can go infinity out into the observed world forever. But you also start at the skin and you go inwards, and you can go forever into the inside world. Two infinities coexisting like yin and yang, right? In a world, why cannot the women be complimented in the same way that quote unquote men do? Well, because we aren't necessarily playing different games, right? These men and women's. As the men typically are attuned to doing stuff to the outside world, to regarding the outside world, to focusing on the outside world, to affecting the outside world. They regard themselves mostly, they concern themselves mostly with the outside world, the men. Whereas the women normally concern themselves with the inside world. These females normally concern themselves with the inside world, the chaotic, the inside world, the emotional, the feelings, the ideal, the idealized, the romantic. Why couldn't we talk about it positively? Well, because we didn't actually have an objective way to talk about it. But now we're going deeper than skin. We're going more than skin deep. We're talking about bones here. As in, we all have the same architecture on the inside. How are we able to laugh together? Because we all share the same architecture inside. Why are we all able to enjoy the same movies and relate to each other over sad movies and cry together? How does all the bodies know how to cry? Because we share the same design, right? Submission is normally seen as a bad thing, but then you go on the internet, you go on some naughty websites, submission is the highest thing. No, why is that? Is it because it's something that we don't want? We don't like submission, we hate it, we think it's whack, we think it's weak? Or is it not strong? Isn't it strong to be able to be in the moment and be able to be happy through it? To be able to make a moment look graceful and beautiful, is that not difficult? To affect the inside world in a way where you are like a rock compared to what's happening on the outside world. No matter what happens on the outside world, you are graceful and able to smile through it. Using submission, is that weak? To be able to submit to the moment and accept that this moment's not the one that you want, is that weak? I don't think so. I don't think so. This submission thing is not hard. It's not easy. As in, you gotta go through something that's hard and smile through it? Now, why is that hot? Why is that sexy to us? Well, for one, submission represents what the inside world must do. This submission concept. Maybe that's why it's so sexy. Maybe that's why it's so hot, because it's actually something we look up to. Maybe men actually look up to women for stuff that regards the sense of self, right? As they are the ones more naturally attuned towards it. Maybe men are actually jealous of some of that stuff, and that's where we actually respect them, is because the women are more attuned to the sense of self, right? What do we mean by the sense of self? Hygiene, personal relationships, relationship with yourself, the emotional, the feelings. Maybe those are sense of self. Relationship with the self, your body, hygiene, taking care of yourself on a regular schedule. Multitasking sometimes with your body, because your body is multiple things, right? You got so many things on your body. You got your hair, your eyes, your mouth, you got your lower body, you got your body to take care of. Now, who's gonna do that? Guys? No. You leave guys alone, they don't take care of themselves. We know that for sure, right? A sense of self. It's where the women shine. It's the freaking women territory. That's where they freaking go hard. That's where guys are just like, I don't know how to do anything. Like, sense of self, what do you mean? Take care of yourself, what do you mean? I'm just gonna kill myself playing a video game. That's what happens when you don't have the feminine spirit around actually like getting good at caring about the self, which is like where they're normally attuned to, because you got the observed world and the observer. Both are equally important, because you cannot have one without the other. You cannot know there is an observed world without the observer. And without the observer, well, there's nothing to observe the world. So there's nothing to talk about the world. You don't even know if it exists. So we have those two sides. And we concerned ourselves with trying to stuff both sexes into the same side. Like here, you guys both are great because you guys both should focus on the same kind of achievements in the outside world. Okay, well, now no wonder our sense of self has been deteriorating. No one's been handling the sense of self, where that was the feminine spirit's job, was to handle the sense of self. Make sure that we don't lose ourselves. Well, look where we are today. But it's not all bad. We're gonna feel great. Why is submission something that we should actually love? Because, say it with me, submission is another word for graceful. Submission is just another word for grace, for gracefulness. The ability to handle a situation with a smile. Isn't that something we all actually look deep down, admire? It makes us feel good to see someone able to do that. Like, wow, you're in a crappy situation, but you can still smile through that? That's crazy and admirable. And we test it, don't we? We test if they can do it, because we're mean. But no, we see submission as a good thing. If you can handle a situation with a smile, it's charming. It allows us to learn from you of how to overcome suffering in our lives. Beautiful. It's freaking gorgeous. Makes us want to be next to you. Makes us want to be with you. Grace, this submission, the submission of what's going on around you, to just maintain your humility as a human, and that you are just in the moment. So why not be happy while you're here? Is there another moment you can possibly be in? Nah. Where's the front of your spine right now? Is it tomorrow or is it yesterday? You can't be nowhere else but here, right? You can't be anywhere else but here, right? So submitting. Do we not actually really respect that? Another example, again, is in the car. If you're in the traffic and you're trying to control the world in your head, aren't you now neglecting the observer as you try to change the observed world? Aren't you now objecting the observer to pain, as they are now not allowed to feel happy in the moment because they're comparing it with this version of the moment that you're trying to impose on the world instead of submitting to it? Aren't you now neglecting the observer? Isn't that why we need the woman? To remind us to be in this moment. To help us be in this moment. To help the observer just stay. To help the observer. Isn't that what submission is great for? To help the observer. And don't you need the observer because you are the observer? Don't you need your body to get all the great things you want? Don't you need your body to get yourself to work so that you can go to that rave? So that you can get that girlfriend, so that you can have those kids, so that you can have that life you want? Don't you need to take care of the observer? Don't we need the feminine spirit for that? As in, don't we all have masculine and feminine spirits within us? Because we're all the same, just different flesh. And so don't we have the feminine spirit? As in, don't we have the spirit within ourselves to look at the self and observe the self. Weren't we just traumatized as a generation away from doing that? Weren't we just traumatized away from being able to see ourselves? Isn't that the issue? Isn't that why we see submission as such a bad thing? As we don't see that it's not just the observed world. We don't see that it's the observed world and the observer. Both are just as important. The observed world is only interpreted through the observer, so how the observer feels about the world, the relationship between the observer and the world, will dictate how happy these people are, what they can do in life. Isn't it something good that we have submission? Shouldn't we see submission as something like grace? Isn't submission grace? The ability to be in the moment and just enjoy. Now why else might this be important? This submission thing. Why else might this submission thing be important? Well, childbearing, right? Submitting to that, allowing the body to relax for that to happen. That is a fantastic quality for a woman to be able to do, for her body, or others, for a baby that will make her happy. People are so afraid of babies. They're like, I don't want a baby. They don't want to submit to a baby, right? They're like, I don't want a baby. It's going to control my life. Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't want something that just exists purely to love me for a while either. I mean, I guess it's such a bad thing to have another human being with all this like godlike energy exuding out of it in order to be there for you, and like you guys learn together and you learn about life together. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, it's such a bad thing. Nah, human beings, when we look at the self, when we properly arrange the idea of the self along with the world, we can begin to see the beauty of every individual, as every person, every human being. Because when you integrate the idea of the self, you can see the actual people and the hope that they bring, the kind of amazing things that they can bring. Are you kidding me? All these kinds of great, crazy things that human beings can do when we integrate more of the self, so that we can learn how to grow the self. Submission, we look at it as such like a bad thing, but is it not something that you can grow? Can you not grow your ability to submit to the moment and feel great in the moment? And isn't that such a great thing to be around? Isn't that a great thing for a child to be around? Here on Padawan, you might be wondering, why does he look like that? On Padawan, you might be looking at Herbie like, why is he inverted like that? Why is he reversed? Why? As we're jazzing out to this piano. Ooh, hit that, baby. Yeah. Here on Padawan, we're inverted because we just look at the world in an inverted way. Inside out. Because the world itself has turned itself inside out. We're just going back to the basics, going back to the insides. We're talking about the insides. We turn things inside out. Flip things on their heads here on Padawan. Talk about some hard truths. Turn things inside out. As in, what might the relationships look like? What might your ability to discern what is great in women and men? How might your ability to tell what is good about a man and woman change should you orient the idea around children? What the heck? What if everything that we find attractive in each other is just about the chillin'? The chillin'. Children. Isn't it a great thing for a woman to be submissive for the children? Not submissive as in do whatever you want to me. Not weakness, but submission as in voluntarily understanding the moment and being graceful about it. How great is that for a mother to be for a child? For a child to look in the mother's eyes and see dreams galore. That everything is possible. For those moments in the life when the child is first orienting to the world, shouldn't everything feel possible? Even when the baby has a folly, shouldn't they see a smile on the face of the mother? Even when the baby falls, even when the baby hurts themselves, even when the baby does something that they should not do, shouldn't the mother be able to skillfully and deftly communicate that with a smile, gracefully? Teach the child how to deal with anger and how to deal with the situations in life gracefully. Submission. Is it men who are the more graceful sex? I'll let you answer that one. submission and grace. If we're looking at the world topsy-turvy, we're looking at it inside out according to the way they look at it right now, right? If we're thinking about living life in a life-loving way instead of death-fearing. As in, just looking for what's good about submission. Well, it's sexy. But why is it sexy to us? Because it makes us want to have more of that. It's like, yo, I would love my kids to be around that. I would love to be around that. It's sexy. Why? Because it reminds you how to deal with life. In that you are. It's so woke, is it not? Your body is so woke to be like, yeah, I just already understand that I am this finite being. And so if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to be happy. So how do I do that? Well, I can't always control the things around me, so I might as well control myself. Control the observer. Look at the self and be like, okay, I'm going to submit to every moment so I can be happy at every moment. So when you're happy, you can do well in every moment and think well and feel well and do well. And make other people do the same. As it requires submission first. Yes, your morning would feel so great on Palgoan. Isn't it so attractive, alluring to see that beautiful face? Submit to certain activities and do it with like a smile. Or maybe not a smile, but just like the act in and of itself. It's representative of how we all must go through life. As men and women both embody the separate parts of the universe together, we create the yin and yang together. Yes, men might be looking at the outside world, but women are looking at the inside world. Primarily. Both two halves of the same coin. Both working together. Both need each other. As the human body is true for both sexes, so the human body must be taken care of for the human man as well. And the human man does not spend a lot of time learning how to do that. Whereas the human female literally has half their body or parts of their body devoted to taking care of not just the self, but a self. An entire self, but from the outside. It's just so crazy when you think about it, this superpower they have. But no wonder they're so concerned and so great at dealing with things that regard to the human self, the observer. They are not themselves just an observer, but they take care of an observer within themselves. For a period of time. No wonder they're so much more attuned towards the self. And no wonder our politics, our culture, our art, our world right now doesn't value them. Doesn't value the feminine qualities, because right now we don't look at the self. We don't recognize the self. We have no way of recognizing the self. We have no communicatable knowledge to talk about the self. Not here on Pagawan though. On Pagawan, we have very specific communicatable knowledge, communicatable language about the self. We're going real deep, guys. Going real deep. The submission. It's required for both soul and body. You must submit to the fact that you are whatever height you are. You must submit to the fact that you just are wherever you are. Wherever you go, there you are. Submit to these words going in one ear and out the other, because you just have to. They're just there, right? Or you can choose to turn the podcast off, change the channel, submit to another moment, you know? Maybe submit to the fact that you are feeling pressured right now and you should go do work or something. Or submit to the fact that maybe you should finally get out of bed. Or submit to the understanding that you have a family that you're going to go visit or something, like, or some friends that you got to go visit. Submit to the fact that you have made friendships that you should not neglect. Maybe we're holding ourselves back and maybe making ourselves more angry instead of being less angry because we're not submitting. And we see submission as such a high quality thing because it teaches us something about life, about an attitude of life. Yes, we shouldn't submit to all things, but there are things that we should submit to should we want more freedom in life. Like submitting to the moment. Because if you submit to any other moment, your body's all confused. You're living in two different moments. Do you have freedom to do what you want? Should you not submit? Should you try to impose your idea on what the moment should look like? Aren't you splitting yourself mentally, spiritually, bodily into 2 different moments, maybe 3 different moments that you wish it could be? And so are you free in that physical realm to actually go for what you want as you are sitting there anxious in the corner of the room thinking about 5 different moments that you wish this party could be like? Sapping you of your energy, of being able to be in the moment and have the freedom to move towards this person and make the move that you want to make. Should you not submit to this moment, would you not have the energy to do that? If you submitted to the moment that there's no other moment, would it not be easier to have harvest all of your human energy towards getting that opportunity that you wanted when it's here and there, instead of getting all anxious when it happens? You're just in the moment. And so submission is so required for the body and soul to feel great. Because it's not just the observed world and the stuff you want out there, but you are the observer of the observed world. And for you to get what you want, you must take care of the observer to get you to where you want in the observed world. You got to take care of the car, take care of the engine, take care of number 1. And so submission, we see it sexy in women because it tells us something about themselves and the way that they can see life, the way that they can handle life, which means maybe the way that they handle being a wife, which means maybe the way they handle bringing a life into the world. This submission thing, maybe it tells you something more about the observer than we used to like to think, because we're not looking at the observer, period, in today's modern society. And finally, this submission thing is so great for children, is it not? Of course, for us too. We like that too. But also for kids, right? Like, we see hope in women's eyes. As a kid, you bump your head, talk about dreams. You're a kid. You don't understand nuance yet. You're just talking. You're just experiencing the world. You just want to love life. You're not thinking about what's realistic. And so that graceful face that women have, that superpower that women have, that amazing natural attunement to body mapping, to the sense of self that they have, the ability to submit to a child's weird ass dream and still make the child still feel like it's possible. Isn't that so attractive? Isn't that so hot? Isn't that sexy? Submission thing, maybe we got it all wrong. Teaches us something about how to handle life, as we all have to submit to the moment. On True Love Tuesdays, as we discuss the relationships between the sexes, men and women. True Love Tuesdays. Today we talked about submission and why it's sexy. Because what even is sexy, right? Maybe desirable for our future kids, what we want to be around when we're wifing up. What do we mean by sexy? Why are things sexy? Well, maybe because they are inspiring to us. Maybe we like these things, right? Maybe there's something really that everybody can learn from submission. It's not just the women, right? Maybe that's it. We have a little bit more communicatable knowledge on Pal Go On about how to place the weight of the body. As we're talking about placing the weight of the body and a sense of self into the front of the spine. It might be hard sometimes, but feel free to walk around or climb. I want to thank you for being here as we discuss True Love Tuesdays, the relationship between the sexes on Pal Go On, as we discuss relationships on everything in Pal Go On, as we introduce you back to yourself, your sense of self. We introduce the observer back into the equation, guys. And notice that women's specialty, the speciality, we're comparing it to all these men's specialities, where the women's sphere most likely is the observer, as in the observer is just as important as the observed world. There is no observed world if there's no observer, because you cannot know if there's an observed world without an observer. You take care of the self. You gotta. And would men do it? I don't know. Men seem to be the ones killing themselves playing Final Fantasy. I don't think they're very in tune with the sense of self. That's just not their game. So we need you, feminines. The sense of self. Let's grow it together, guys. I'm Pal Go On. morning. As we close out here, let's stretch our self-awareness here. You know, it's Tuesday, July 6, 2021. I want to thank you so much for being here. I hope that you were able to place the weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all the times. Remember, not the back spiny portion of the back of the spine, which does not hold any weight, but actually houses nerves. You don't want to place the weight there. They're poor nerves. Society's been telling you to place weight on the back. No, you want to place weight on the front of the spine to get that good balance, to feel the balance from the inside out, to feel good on the inside out. Your morning would feel so great on Padawan. We'll see you tomorrow morning, guys. Good love. Want to shout out Eric Taylor and Unicycle Man and D-Live. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day, okay, guys? Take care of yourselves out there. Feel the weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all the times. This has been Padawan. I'm going to return that chorus. I love that chorus so much.